on one second. Yep. All right. So now everything can and will be used against me if I say something really stupid. All right. So that's being recorded so we can share that with folks. So one screen on just who we are and what we do. Agile Blue, for those of you who know us, maybe some partners out there, is an AI-assisted SOC, Security Operations Center, and SOAR, Orchestration and Auto Response Platform. I always like to define the acronyms because there's a million of them and we all have different definitions. And our whole goal is to detect and respond to cyber attacks to cloud, networks, endpoints, APIs before there's a breach with our 24/7 team. And it's our job to have the technology and the team to keep our customers ahead of the potential attack. So today, our agenda is pretty simple, but it's good. And again, we'll answer any questions and then we'll get you back to your day. But it's all about understanding AI and automation, where that's actually having a piece in threat detection and prevention, how it is automating cyber operations, which is a huge benefit, right? And in many ways, where user behavior analytics come in. And this is going to be interesting because Lee's going to close up with ethical considerations and challenges, which I think a lot of folks, when they think about the ethical challenges of AI, is it just going to replace our jobs? I'm one of those people that think it's not, it's going to enhance. I'm sure it's going to replace some jobs, but those folks will be reassigned to different things, which are going to be better. But there's more ethical considerations to think through, and that's something that should be interesting. So let's dive in. I always like to start here when it comes to AI. We do a bunch of AI discussions with clients and conferences. But what's the difference between AI and machine learning, right? I think it's a pretty fine line, and I think it's important to understand how machine learning really focuses on the ability for all of the technologies to interact, understanding the data, learn, be dynamic, change those algorithms as it consumes more of that learned data from specified sources. AI takes it to that next level, right? It's that cognitive ability then to take all that data, make decisions, grow, carry out those tasks. And when you think about automation, I mean, it's great if we're able to identify something in a minute and a human being can hit a button and stop something from happening, and we've just mitigated a cyber attack. But what happens if we now focus on milliseconds where AI with a high degree of confidence is making that decision and shut something down? Now we're even mitigated our risk even further. And that's where technology is going and moving pretty fast. The great thing about AI, though, as well, is it just doesn't search and index and use neatly searchable data in databases or SIMs, especially when it comes to cyber, but unstructured stuff as well. Where's the latest threat intelligence? Where's the latest trends that we may not even have yet, right? Or are just consuming the internet to continually to help our AI grow. And that's a huge benefit. We partner with AWS and a lot of our AI stuff and working with their engineers, and they're able to bring to us a thought process that helps us understand that it literally can be unlimited, but it has to have some limitations to it. Otherwise, it's the Wild West, and that's not good either, right? And one of the big things about AI is it's not only learning our company and being able to be that specific resource. It can be an institutional memory guide that sustains people, sustains different historical events that are happening, especially in cyber, and it's just more alive, so to speak. And those are really where you see some of the differences. Now, in the news, we all hear ChatGPT. Sometimes we hear Google Bard, although I got to be candid, I enjoy playing around with Google Bard, maybe even a little bit more than ChatGPT. And I'm not even a huge Google fan, but sorry if there's any Google people on here. I doubt they'd be on here. But anyway, I think Bard's excellent as well. But when you think about ChatGPT, or let's just start saying more large language models and AIs that we're seeing launch every day of the week, they're having an impact, right? People are already saying, hey, we know these are going to hit us. The overwhelming majority of people in some responses recently by Checkpoint and BlackBerry, two very large reputable organizations, you got the majority of folks believe they're going to start hurting when it comes to cyber. Why? More believable phishing emails. And I saw some actually this morning that were fantastic. And it's like spot the the malicious email here, and it's hard. You need AI to discover the AI. But also where decision makers, IT decision makers, believe that there are attacks that are going to come for ChatGPT. And let me throw this out to you. If you've gone to ChatGPT just to play around and have asked it to create you a script, a malicious script that does something, and whatever that something is, and I'm not going to give anybody ideas, but we do have a big list of them that we've been putting together. If it can create code for the good, it knows how to reverse that code for the bad. And there's a lot of that in ChatGPT right now, and that is not for the good. It's able to take mid-level hackers, people who weren't even hackers, and improve their abilities to become a hacker because it's doing a lot of the work for them, right? Because necessarily it doesn't understand, I guess it could, but right now it doesn't, how whatever it's creating could potentially be harmful, right? So you're starting to see more and more folks understand that this is potentially bad. Also, and I'd like to throw that out to Lee and Vishal really quick as well. As you guys think through this, have you seen any use cases where any of your customers have said, I see the dangers here, or I'm worried about this? Have you seen anything like that?
Not necessarily customers or clients, but I've done some research, Tony, in terms of where they've seen there's cases of AI, like even some of the chatbots out there that have been weaponized and not for the good, right? And I think we're going to see more and more of those types of attacks progress here throughout the end of the year and into 2024.
Absolutely. This slide right here, the source got cut off. The source of this is McKinsey. I always source everything. This is a McKinsey study that you guys see on screen. But when you look through everything that even political stability, which is kind of funny, is there such a thing? But when you look at everything here that McKinsey was doing this research on, organizations that consider the risk relevant, organizations actually working towards mitigating the risk. I mean, cybersecurity is leading, and actually where people are working right now, but probably the second most thing where they feel it's risk relevant, next to inaccuracy, which I find interesting. I'm not so certain, generative AI solves the inaccuracy problem. Maybe it creates more of one in some regards. But you see cybersecurity, no matter the level of someone, whether they're a business, a sales, whether they're in product, whether they are in IT, whatever, cybersecurity is ranking as key. And that's important to understand, because I think when people look at AI right now, aside from writing something for you or giving you information, I think cybersecurity is the next use case that AI is going to have tremendous impacts on, both to the negative and then obviously the positive. Lee just mentioned this, and I think this is interesting. Cyberhaven just had this release come out. When it comes to ChatGPT, and we've seen this with some of our own customers, they will remain absolutely nameless on this discussion. But how much sensitive data goes into ChatGPT? A lot. People are taking medical, financial, employees, dumping information into ChatGPT, not because they're malicious internal people. They're trying to put in large data sets to get some analysis going to help their job, maybe do some of their job, but maybe just look at what they're trying to produce in a different way. But they are putting in sensitive information, confidential information, and publicly traded companies, we're finding, and Samsung is one of them, we're putting in confidential information that wasn't released yet in their earnings report into ChatGPT. When you log into ChatGPT, it gives you two little headers. It's like, hey, don't put anything confidential in here. It tells you this. And people just hit the next button and start putting confidential information in. There is a ton of confidential information in ChatGPT, and that is where it is going to come back to bite folks big time. And Vishal, any comments on this, or have you seen anything like this? We saw one of our customers in the healthcare space actually physically have to deal with this with customers or with their employees. They actually had to block internal access to ChatGPT.
Yeah, I am seeing companies are using solutions like CASB and so on to block access to to Chat GPT. So like in our company, we use Chat GPT. I personally do, but it's mainly for doing some research on public information. I think more and more companies will now start rolling out policies on what they can share on such site, be it like ChatGPT, Bard, and so on.
I think you're going to not only see policies coming out, or we're seeing people now getting reports on who's accessing ChatGPT in the office, how long they're on it, so at least they know. I'm sorry, Lee, I think I might have cut you off.
No worries. I was going to add that I've seen and talked to a couple other security leaders that are, especially in large organizations, are using generative AI and developing their own solutions in-house, where they're actually considering they need to develop governance around AI and the data sets that they utilize. And then more importantly, it's just like change control and pipelines, right? And the development process of who's actually allowed to put data sets into AI. They're trying to, kind of get govern that in terms of the source of data, but then also who can actually include data sets. So it's a interesting paradigm. So
very interesting, and I think it's just starting. And there's Samsung, I just referenced it, had an actual use case. There was a ton of confidential data put in right before earnings call, and they were trying to understand as they launched this, as the earnings call was about to come out a day or two later, how it was going to impact things, impact sales, impact their supply chain, impact their stock price. And they were just loading up the confidential data, and that data was not allowed to get out. So you're also, Lee brings up a good point in governance. The SEC, if you're a publicly traded company, you might have something to say about things like this as well. When's this data actually going into these models, right? So I think it's interesting. Obviously, we are in, people always try to equate this to baseball. We're in the first inning. I don't even think we're in the first inning, right? Like I think we're at batting practice right now, just getting this thing going. And, but we are seeing some things. We just talked about that generated code can instantly turn a 12-year-old into a hacker. I mean, the code that chat can produce to create something, a malicious script, or maybe accessing something, and I'm not going to give any ideas on this, but there's a whole lot of use cases. It's good stuff. AI versus AI. Obviously, if somebody's using AI, you need that automation to then and that intelligence to then go out and combat it. If you think human beings are going to be able to combat AI, maybe, but there's going to be such a large time gap in between that's going to present a problem. We just talked about the confidential, info being plugged in, PHI, PII, confidential business data, definitely seeing that. And then deep fakes using AI. I've been using this use case for a couple of months now as more deep fakes, pictures, audio, right? A great use case. And I'll be a little bit general with this, but this is a live use case where an audio file was attempted to be sent to HR via email, via Outlook, that said, hey, I'm employee so-and-so, I run engineering, or I run sales, I'm going to change my bank account, can you change it to this for the upcoming pay? Now, obviously, that didn't fool anybody. That's just the precursor, right? That's getting going. Now where that voice, audio, video sounds really good. And by the way, all this information is available on social media, right? LinkedIn has pictures and your position and more detailed information on you. And if you post videos, like I guess we're doing now, voice is easy to grab as well, right? So you're going to start seeing more deep fakes because AI is progressing so fast. Now, that's the bad. I always like to end on the good, the optimistic stuff, where it's making a difference, right? Number one, it is by far helping people make better decisions. So when you think about cyber folks in general, it's going to help us make more efficient and effective decision making. And by efficient and effective, I call on that to be speed to make decisions, speed to response. That's a big piece of where AI is helping. It's also going to allow us to make better decisions, right? Which is huge. reducing false positives, moving on the true positives, and finding the right way to respond. And I really believe this, it is not taking our jobs. Maybe some of those jobs, maybe, and I'm never going to say never, but maybe some. But I think it's going to make the jobs we have more productive, realign those folks into being more productive. And I think that's going to be a big benefit. Now, I'm not naive enough to think that it's not going to destroy something, right? But at the end of the day, when it comes to cyber, I think it is way more of a catalyst. It's way more of an addition than it is anything else. It's also helping analyze risk, where we can roll out solutions that make sense and roll them out with the speed we know is going to make a difference. So that's where I think you see AI making a difference. When you think about it, Lee, what are your thoughts on taking one of those selections out and more automation around security operations?
Yeah, I've got quite a few thoughts on that, Tony. And you can see like that first bullet point that I included in there. And again, the source here is Gartner. You take a look at the market for AI, and again, this is AI software. I went back and actually looked at this. This data point was actually released in 2001. They were looking at you can see a $134 billion market by 2025. Now we're halfway through 2023 here already, and I think everyone can agree in the first 7 months of the year, AI has really taken off, and everywhere you go, every conversation, every meeting, every webinar, if you will, people are talking about AI and the use cases. So when we talk about AI and cybersecurity, there's a couple things that I just wanted to go through. I think in terms of repetitive tasks, you can see a big, as Tony put it, a big increase in efficiency, where you can actually utilize AI as a benefit to your program. And again, a lot of larger organizations are starting to, introduce AI into their everyday cybersecurity teams and software and everything. I think, as we go through the next year or so, or even 2 years, you'll see medium-sized and small-sized business be able to utilize that, even through their business partners or outsourcing it to business partners. So a good example, in terms of augmenting time-consuming tasks, like a good use case would be user access reviews. Everyone does them on a quarterly or even monthly basis. You can use AI to basically go through all of your user lists and everything like that, and accounts to basically flag for you, accounts that need to be then reviewed, instead of having an individual on your team go through that. Another good example is security questionnaires. I just had a conversation with one of our clients the other day and asked them how many security questionnaires they get a year, and they're actually getting over 100 a year. 100. And I know other organizations in certain industries and verticals that are getting, a couple hundred, and they're looking for solutions. Now, there's solutions in the marketplace that actually use AI to actually identify like common questions, common responses, etc. But again, you can use these tools and technologies such as AI, but it also includes, you have to include some type of human intervention as well, just to review the data sets and the results. It's kind of a common theme throughout all of these. And then last but not least, vulnerability management. So all the organizations that we work with, and even, when I have conversations with my peers in the industry, vulnerability management, it's really difficult to get your hands around all the vulnerabilities that you have on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and prioritize them and remediate them. And I think AI can really bring some good benefit to that, to kind of harness all the efficiencies and moving something like that forward. And I think efficiency, like Tony mentioned, making better decisions and faster decisions is really a good benefit of AI. So
Lee, we had a question come in on the security training. I mean, everybody does some type of security training, whether they're using things like KnowBe4 or Barracuda, or whatever they might be using. Are you seeing any of them being updated to specifically address how a human could maybe find or detect AI?
I think with any type of security training, and kind of with that bullet point, what I meant is there's pattern recognition, right? with some of the tools out there. I mean, even if at its simplest form, like even if you're looking at like email filtering, I think those technologies will get even better as they incorporate AI. What I was referring to under security training is that, you know, basically having AI actually help us with simulating certain types of attacks such that we can be proactive with response. And where I go with that is that, you know, utilizing AI to actually within a tabletop exercise, it can create a real world scenario where you can actually run through it in a contained, you know, environment. I've also read where, you know, some of the larger organizations are using AI within kind of a sandbox, if you will, where they're actually taking their incident response teams through these scenarios of an actual attack, and they're utilizing AI not only in the response, but then also, you know, to kind of help train their systems, their detection and everything. So you can see that, yeah, you know, and I would say that another piece is incident analysis. So if we can use those AI techniques to mine data and group data on commonalities in terms of threats and attacks and even threat intelligence, that would be a huge asset, you know, especially if we can use those AI-based systems to automatically respond. And by that, I mean, like if you can actually shut down an infected system or quarantine, like some technologies out there already can, that's a huge benefit. Or even, you know, if we can quarantine malicious files. And I think that would be significant just in terms of being able to identify an infected file or user access and actually be able to shut that down. But I think, you know, that also leads to where we see that AI can identify pattern recognition. And, you know, instead of, you know, multiple humans looking at behavior across multiple systems and applications, we can utilize AI algorithms to detect that anomalous behavior. And that may indicate like an insider threat, or as I mentioned, that unauthorized access or unusual network access, and actually be able to prevent those types of incidents from actually occurring.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think that anomalous part of it is a really big deal, because some of these newer tactics and techniques might not be able to be completely sniffed out yet, but detecting those anomalous behaviors of a device or a human can be, whether it's AI or human driven, we can detect that. And that is a great catch-all to stay, you know, to kind of stay ahead. So jumping into what we kind of just talked about, Vishal, when you think about real world examples, you know, Lee just brought up some awesome ones. Talk us through some of the real world examples of the good of AI, where it's actually helping cybersecurity professionals like us, like you, like the people listening on this webinar.
Sure, Tony. So I'll cover a few of them because there's a lot of information. Let's take threat detection. So usually when we do that, we look at, it's called IOC, indicators of compromise. So it is based on the tactics, techniques, and the procedures that the malicious actors do. You know, but the same group which is going to hack, say, company A, may not follow the same exact pattern in company B. You know, and like they may learn something from one group, something from a third group, and then combine it and see what works. So keeping track of that manually is not possible. You know, you have to have a system that can learn patterns and then make its own make its own informed decision to tell you, hey, like this seems like something weird is going on. You may want to check it. For fraud fraud detection. So it's fairly common now, say for banks and like credit card companies to track the geo location of where the card is being used. Say I am in Dallas, and within 1 hour the card is being used in Seattle. That seems weird. But where AI comes into play, say I am traveling from Dallas to Seattle. I use my card at the Dallas airport, and the same card is used in Seattle in like 3 or 4 hours, like whatever is the flight duration. In that case, the AI system can know, hey, this guy may be possibly traveling, so this is a valid transaction. But say I don't use my card in Dallas or at the Dallas airport or the Seattle airport, but I use my card in Seattle to buy something on a website. So that might raise a flag, because why is this card being used in Seattle, not at a physical location, but to buy something online? So creating rules for all this, for all the possible combinations is not feasible. That's why we have to use AI for this.
We've seen a little bit of an uptick, Vishal, not to interrupt, but also we've
Yeah.
seen a little bit of an uptick in 365 logins with an impossible travel, right? Like I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, I'm logged in, I'm happy. And I'm also logged in in Seattle, Washington. Like, let me tell you something, I'm not. So we're starting to see an uptick there as well. So instead of it being a credit card transaction, there's that impossible travel, or when it comes to logging in, that type of activity as well. And I think you're seeing an uptick of that in other things as well. Have you seen things like that?
Yeah, and like that is the perfect cue to the next topic you have there, like user behavior analysis. So say like if I sign in at 8 o'clock in the morning, I sign out around 5. That's fine. But if I see that, say, this user is signing into the systems every 2 hours for days, like it won't make sense, because the guy is not sleeping, so that would raise a flag. So that's one good example of where like rules don't work, but AI works perfectly. In terms of phishing, at our company we use a phishing detection software, but it's not perfect. Things still slip through. Where AI comes into play is that it can detect, hey, like this sender sent me another email from another address. Like the name is the same, but the email domain is slightly different. And even if my sender got hacked, it can check here that the link in the email does not correspond to where is being sent from, or if it is a known bad site or a malicious site. So it really helps me as the user. If in the future, if there's some kind of like prompt, that tells me, hey, this email looks a bit weird, so just be a bit cautious. And lead test on the whole autonomous response side, like quarantining a device, a user, quarantining any phishing email, and so on. Yep. And the last point I really want to stress on, we have a dire need in our cybersecurity field for people with the right skills. And one of the reasons is that like I would like to train people, like I'm sure Lee would like to train people to like delegate some of the work, and then so that they can also learn. But we are so busy putting out fires that we don't get time to do all that, and it also causes burnout, if you're doing the same thing over and over again. We can use the power of AI so that we can focus on only the true positives, get rid of like the daily mundane tasks that we do, and spend our time doing more quality work, and also be able to train and teach people who are new in this field.
That's right.
Yeah, I think Vishal, you make a very good point, just in terms of, like, I haven't run into anyone in cybersecurity anecdotally that's saying, like, I've got too many people, and it's more along the lines of, I got a skills gap in terms of my people, or I don't have a person for this, whether it be vulnerability management or identity management, etc. We can take some of those, utilize AI to kind of help with the repetitive day-to-day tasks and everything like that. We can focus people more on the strategic things that we want to get done, or reviewing the output of those mundane tasks. I think that's where we can really use AI to benefit us, to kind of narrow that skills gap, and also the labor shortage as well.
Absolutely. We've been, developing a lot of tools in our SOC to take that low-hanging fruit that, Vishal brings up a great point, burnout, right? People are just tired of whatever these subset of tasks are that can be totally automated. If you can figure that out, and you have a more responsive team then who's spending their time threat hunting, working with customers on the forensic side of things, that's where you're putting your best foot forward. And that's where the customer really understands and is happy. Meaning, and when I say customer, I mean our customers. So clients, so businesses. The last thing a business wants to do is get a ton of emails from someone chasing false positives and things like that. That technology can be working on. So Vishal, just kind of playing off what you just talked about, talk a little bit about some of the AI advancements in cyber that have been, I don't know, I think proliferating over the last 3, 4, 5 months, that have really been on the uptick, that are helping, folks more than presenting a challenge to them.
Yeah, so like we have seen the bad guys use AI and automation. So tackling that the old school way is not practical anymore. You have to move with the times. If the bad guys are using these as their weapons, we also have to, and what like the biggest impact that I've seen AI do within cyber security is to go through tons of data. Like we collect data on how the user is signing in, where he's signing for, which apps are being used, where is this this data going, where it's coming from, who is going to access this application when. So like you have a lot of metrics. You also add if this particular app has a 0-day vulnerability out, or this particular Windows version has vulnerabilities and it's not been patched yet. So like collecting all that data into one place and then making sense out of it and giving out a true positive in that amount of time, which is the mean time to detect, and then even to respond to it, the mean time to respond, that has been brought down by leaps and bounds in the past 2 years.
Yeah.
I'm going to see, and I'm seeing that we will get better at it with time. So now you have threat intelligence feeds being fed into these learning systems. But in the future, I see like all the bigger players, they will have their own AI systems also speaking to each other, so they can collectively talk and respond.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And I think some of when you talk about mean time to detect and respond, those have definitely made huge strides over the last couple of years. It's still not enough, right? So, it's funny when you talk to folks, they're like, hey, how do you stop something from happening, whatever the something is? Sometimes it's almost impossible to stop everything, right? But when it talks about risk mitigation, the best way to mitigate that risk, to mitigate the damage, so to speak, is the speed of detection, thus the speed of response.
Yep.
And that's where I think a lot of folks need to reposition their thinking, because if you can adapt on the fly to an attack, and everybody can be attacked, not everything can be stopped, but the faster that you move allows us to then mitigate something where whatever happened is pretty much a non-event. And that's the key, is all about risk mitigation. And that will help us then stop more things. If you just think everything gets stopped and doesn't make any impact and speed doesn't matter, that's going to be the problem. And some of the technologies folks deploy these days are all built like that. And I don't think giving them their best line of defense as they move forward. So it's a great point you bring up, Vishal. Lee, we talked, earlier we talked about the ethical considerations, right? And Vishal, it'd be great to hear, if you have any thoughts on this as well. The ethical considerations when you listen to the news or read the Wall Street Journal in the morning, it's all about jobs, and things like that. Obviously, there's a lot of great things with AI. There's going to be some negative things with AI, just like everything in the world has a positive and some negatives. So Lee, talk to us a little bit about ethical considerations and challenges. And I think this is going to be a fun little discussion here. And I bet you we'll get some questions on this, but please go ahead.
Yeah, and we centered this around cybersecurity in particular when we talk about augmentation of a team or replacement of a team. I don't really see, like we just talked about earlier, that the lower skilled workers or that are going to be replaced within a cyber security environment or team. This is really to focus on that repetitive work. Again, as Vishal mentioned earlier, we're not trying to replace anyone by introducing AI generative technology. It's really to take the mundane tasks that we have from a day-to-day, week-to-week perspective to automate that and get people to think critically about the data that's provided from an AI-based system. I think that can only help as we try to kind of widen narrow that skills gap and everything. And next that we talked a little bit about attackers using AI as well. So that's one of the ethical things, as we create this technology and just like other technologies within other industries, as it gets better within the next couple of months and years and everything like that, we're also going to see adversaries like nation states actually utilize AI. And again, we talked about this just in terms of cyber threats. For example, the phishing attempts, deploying malware, whether it be through ChatGPT or other avenues. And then also, as Tony mentioned, kind of convincing those deep fake videos, which is concerning. How we're going to be able to catch up to that and actually, identify and detect and more importantly, respond to those types of attacks. I think they'll be crucial over the next couple of months. Then we talked a little bit about bias, but there's other industries that have already recognized bias. These systems are really designed to perform tasks efficiently, but they lack human understanding. And I think you know, as we've seen within any industry, like, you know, bad data equals bad decisions, even with AI involved. So, you know, some examples that I bring are, you know, resume reviews in HR. So, you know, and even like loan reviews and loan decisions on loan applications. We've seen that within other industries over the last couple of years where AI has already been deployed, and there's been examples of, you know, basically this bias introduced on those decisions, and even in education. I think it was within the last couple of weeks here, there's been some, you know, news from very highly prestigious institutions where they've had some bias just in terms of, you know, their loan applications and their admissions and everything. So
I'll jump in 1 second on the bias, Lee, and it's funny. So, you know, I was having this discussion with someone the other day of AI having bias, and I think the question was they didn't understand how and where that could come from. And I said, you know, if you think about it, AI is driven by, well, and especially the stuff we're talking about. And if you're talking about ChatGPT and things like that, large language models. Those language models are learning from learned texts, learned things. Well, if it's learning from something that had bias in it, and it is not a human being, and it's trying to decipher, does it honestly, and is it capable of understanding the bias to weed it out? I have seen things where it will give you two sides of the equation, especially ChatGPT, where it'll say, hey, there's some folks who think this on a topic, and there's some other folks who think this on a topic. And I found that to be a really interesting answer instead of just going one side or the other. There's other been things that have been extraordinarily biased, and it's like, come on, man, who wrote this, right? But when it comes to cyber, you try to think, where could bias kind of play in? Well, one, it could definitely play in on the hiring aspect of things, no doubt about it. And that's something that scares everybody, because with a skills gap, and as you try to diversify a cyber workforce that's generally not been the most diversified, that could play in there. And that's pretty scary stuff that you don't want to see materialize, right? So from a human perspective, I think you can see bias. And think about it, there could be bias when it comes to threat detections. I don't think there are any use cases for what I'm about to say, but if something is learned and something is using specific learning models to utilize a specific AI model, what happens if that AI model is attacked? What happens if that AI model has been manipulated by a hacker, a very advanced hacker? And what happens when you're using that model to identify potential threats, to respond to threats, but it's now have a programming bias in it to understand that if it's maybe finding something from that ransomware or whatever it might be, that it doesn't utilize its technology to the fullest. And some folks have posited that and thrown it around. We haven't seen any use cases of that, but I think you're crazy not to think it can happen. If cybersecurity systems have been manipulated at the code level, why can't an AI model or a learned model be manipulated as well?
And Tony, that's actually a really good lead into that last bullet point in terms of security
Well,
challenges.
Lee, I'm here to give you a perfect segue. I mean, come on.
Right? You know, do we become too reliant on AI-based systems? And does that eventually give us a false sense of security? So if we're you know, basing all of our detection controls on AI, does that potentially, you know, do we neglect some of the response controls, such as user awareness and or incident response planning and tabletop exercises, because we put all of our focus and all of our you know, like overview and insight and everything into these systems, these AI-based systems that are going to detect all of these adversaries and threats and everything. And then last but not least, you know, when we talk about, you mentioned ChatGPT and Samsung, you know, if we're relying upon these proprietary and or open source third-party training data and models and everything, could that private data end up in public domain? As you mentioned, you know, that Samsung release of their data and everything before their quarterly findings and everything, could we face, you know, the reality that, you know, some of this data gets out into the public domain and everything without us even aware of it? So again, having some governance control around that, I think is crucial as we move forward with some of these, you know, AI-based technologies.
Absolutely. A couple questions have come in, and I'm gonna throw one out to you, Lee, and then Vishal, I'm gonna throw one out to you as well. So a question's come in. Any recommendations on how to approach my team, meaning this person's team who posed this question, team to not use ChatGPT?
To not
Is
use
that censorship? Is that new age censorship?
Well, I think, if you don't want them, you can create policy around not utilizing ChatGPT for work. Vishal mentioned there's also a technical control where you can actually block it. Those would be two recommendations. I think just like anything, having a business need is kind of what it comes down to. And that's what I would recommend.
Yep, absolutely. Vishal, another question came in talking more geographical, and everybody always likes to say Russia, China, North Korea, Iran. Okay, we know those guys, but the question is geographically, where do we see the most hacking that is using more advanced capabilities such as AI? Do we see where that's coming from? Can we even detect that? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I was at the RSA conference this year. Yeah.
Yep.
And
I saw you there. I had a beer with you.
It's been a while. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there we had a presentation by Mandiant where they showed that 60% of the cyber attacks coming on the US are coming from China. And most of them right now are using AI. In fact, I would say China may be a bit ahead of us in using AI for cyber attacks. So we are still a bit behind there.
Yep. I'm getting ready to head to Black Hat here next week for a day or so, not staying for the whole time. And I was talking to a colleague who runs a pretty good sized organization, and he's former military and was in the government, and has a very interesting perspective. Now runs a private business, and yeah, all the main players that we talked about, we know they're all using stuff. We also understand a lot of the nation states aren't coming after small mid-sized businesses, but that technology they use can proliferate for then the ransomware and the cyber gangs to use on small and mid-sized businesses. Look, not everybody's going after Samsung every day because Samsung has a lot of dollars to put towards it, but small and mid-sized businesses aren't, and they become tremendous targets for everyone. And no, I hate saying this, but they're the ones that generally get beat then, right? And one of his positions was a lot of these attacks also do proliferate in the United States of America, right? There's a lot of very smart, very hardworking, great developers, great engineers here in America that aren't the most, morally conscious as well. So, it does happen outside, of course, we all know that, but don't underestimate what could be happening from within our borders as well, right? So at the end of the day, it's just hard stuff to detect, but it's good to hear that perspective. Thanks for sharing that statistic. I think that's interesting. So this is the last slide, and I think we have a couple more questions that have come in, but how do you defend? Okay, let's talk about that. Let's make sure we get this out before we wrap this thing up. How do you defend, right? Okay, stay up to date, just understand what's happening. There's a lot of great resources out there to tell you where things are proliferating. Just understanding these things on a day-to-day basis as an IT professional, like everybody is on this call, most likely, is important. Implement those strong controls. Lee talked about it, right? Vulnerability management, 24/7 monitoring, using automation to respond, not just human beings. Those are very big deals, right? Lee talked about using AI cybersecurity tools, especially that bring in behavioral analysis and things like that. Vishal definitely touched on training your employees. Training, forbidding, at least monitoring, knowing who's using these things in your systems is probably the first best step. I mentioned one of our customers having an issue with that, and them now just monitoring who's attempting to go there, what they're doing, allows them to just have some visibility on it, right? And then, of course, incident response plans. When something happens, if something happens, look, I hope something doesn't happen. I'm knocking on my fake wood desk right now, but if it does, have plans, test those plans, operate those plans as soon as something goes off. And of course, I'm going to end with, you got to be working with cyber experts. I mean, how could you do this alone, right? I mean, you got to be working with people who know what they're doing. Lee, any final thoughts that you would impart on our very generous attendees today who've given us almost an hour of their time?
Yeah, I think, again, take a look at how AI can benefit you and your program, right? With the skills shortage, the work, the employee gap and everything like that, how can you utilize AI to be proactive, get out in front of some of these threats, minimize the repetitive work? That's kind of where the industry is going right now.
Yep, absolutely. And Lee, thank you for joining us today. Vishal, any final thoughts that you would like to put to use?
I would just add to what Lee mentioned. So AI is not going to replace cyber experts, but it's going to be a strong help.
Yep, I would totally agree with that. I think AI, even though we know the negatives, has tremendous positives on cybersecurity. I think it's going to make a huge difference in cybersecurity. But like I said, I honestly, we're in the batting practice. We're not even in the first inning yet. There's a long way to go as we continue to work through it. If I can connect anyone on this call with Lee or Vishal, please feel free to send me an email or a text too. Just tell me who you are. Don't try to steal my SIM card, because that's a current activity that's been going good. SIM card hijacking is profitable. But yeah, send us an email, whatever. Be happy to connect you with Lee. He can answer any questions. Vishal can as well. For those of you who joined, really thank you for all the time you've given us. Jillian, our amazing director of marketing, will be sending this deck out. We'll be making the recording available. And if you have any points or any thoughts, just let us know. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for joining us. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.